It's Essential Pittsburgh. I'm Paul Guggenheimer. As with any new year, we are all looking forward to better days ahead. And it's safe to say that half the battle for creating a more successful outcome is having some idea of what to expect. While no one can predict exactly what the future holds, there are those who have the ability to identify trends. Gerald Celente is the publisher of the TrendsJournal and for over 3 decades has forecast trends for the coming year. The website is TrendsJournal.com. He joins us by phone from Kingston, New York. Gerald Celente, welcome to Essential Pittsburgh and Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year, and thanks for having me on, Paul.
Before we look ahead, let's look back a bit. You say in your blog that, quote, never in our 33 years of trend forecasting have we experienced a year that rang out on such a downbeat note and a new year that is ringing in with so muted and upbeat, end quote. So are you saying that at no time in the last 3 decades has any situation been as bad as the one we're in now?
Well, the environment has never been this bad. First of all, for the listeners who don't know, I'm a political atheist. I don't believe in political religions, and I don't bow to political gods. So what I have to say isn't because I'm for one team or the other. To me, it's the Bonanos and the Gambinos. I began my career, by the way, running political campaigns in Westchester County in New York, and was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate, and taught American politics and campaign technology out at St. John's University, and spent several years in D.C. as a government affairs specialist. So what I have to say isn't because I'm on one side or the other. I've never seen an election flop like the one that happened in 2012. This was an election of a lesser of two evils, and the bloom fell off the rose almost immediately after Election Day. You start with the equity markets, they dove around the world. And then I was listening to the announcer just before I came in, and she used the words to the effect of the drama going on in Washington, D.C. Right away, they had the whole nation fearful. We're going to go off the fiscal cliff. It was a drama. It's the D.C. drama queens. And if it's not fiscal cliff, it's terrorism. But this, or something of some nature, to put fear and dread into the people's minds. So here we come after the election. We go into this, it's going to get worse, it could end. And then, of course, we had the terrible tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut. So the year ended on a very down note. And now it's beginning again on another down note. All right, we avoided some of the fiscal cliff, but we still have the major problem to deal with. How are they going to deal with the deficit? And then you look around the world, and they just upped the numbers now in Syria. It's now 60,000 dead. Then there's a civil war, of course, in Libya, and you go on throughout Europe. I mean, they're bringing Mussolini back in Italy. That shows you how bad it is. And they're worried about the Golden Dawn, another fascist group popping up in Greece. So as we're looking around the world and seeing where it's going, it doesn't look very good.
You have broken down specific areas of the trends that you identify: war, peace, fracking, among others. Let's look at some of these, beginning with war. Now, you say that even as the world lurches further into crisis, as the conflicts proliferate, and you've identified some of them, that they are not only connected, but also cumulative. What does that mean?
Well, what it means is that when we see 1 million people taking to the streets, the indignados in Spain, and millions taking to the street throughout Europe, whether it's in Greece, in Portugal, in Ireland, in Italy, for the austerity measures that have been imposed upon them, people aren't calling it what it is. This is class warfare. You're looking at unemployment rates in Greece and in Spain over 25%. Those are the official numbers. And then you're looking at youth unemployment over 50%. And it's a replay throughout many countries throughout Europe and in Eastern Europe and in Hungary. And then you look at the wars that I just mentioned in Syria and Libya. Oh, and what's going on in Egypt. And you look at what's going on in Tunisia. It was never an Arab Spring, by the way. We wrote about it before it happened. And we actually had two people on the ground there in Tahrir Square that were there throughout the entire outbreak. And by some stroke of fortune, they landed 2 days before the riots began. This has to do with far too few having much too much and way too many having much too little. It's class warfare. And then you look what's going on in Bahrain. There's a civil war going on. It's not making the news because the United States has the Fifth Fleet Station there, and they're Emir's our buddy. You're looking at what same thing is going on. By the way, uprisings are also happening in Saudi Arabia that aren't making the news. There's a civil war in Yemen. You go around the world and you can start putting all the pieces together. And then there's another parallel that's very interesting. You had the crash of 1929. Then you had the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War, the Panic of '08. There's a Great Depression going on in much of the world. There are currency wars going on. Those aren't my words. Those are the words of the new Prime Minister of Japan, Abe. There's a currency war. The outgoing head of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, was here in New York a few weeks ago. There's a currency war going on. You listen to Guido Montega, the financial chief of Brazil. There's a currency war going on. Trade wars are heating up. And unfortunately, the clock is playing a song and a tune that we've heard before. It's ticking, we believe, to another war, just as it did following the 30s.
At a New Year's Eve party, there was a conversation about when you talk about those who have more getting more and those who have less getting less, creating a greater bifurcation between the rich and the poor. As that begins to expand in the United States, can you see the kind of uprising happening here that we have seen in Europe?
Different here. There's something else going on here, and that is that, again, I'm a political atheist. I'm not, saying this because I'm taking sides. One of the things with trend forecasting, by the way, just a little tip, and I have a number of books too I've written, is that the government waits until Friday to announce news, late Friday after people leave the capitals, whether it's state or in D.C., and it comes out on Saturday, and that's the least read news day of the week. And then they also do things during the holidays when no one's watching. Last New Year's Eve, President Obama signed into order the National Defense Authorization Act. And that allows effectively the president to declare any American citizen an enemy of the state. And the military could come and take you away. You have no judge, no jury, no trial. It overturns habeas corpus. It doesn't exist. Most people still don't know about it. Also within that act, and this is to answer your question, will there be uprisings here? They also repealed the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878. Remember, the Civil War is going on. The military was still in control of different areas. So they put in the Posse Comitatus Act that would not allow the military to take over police duties. They also repealed that. And then we just had President Obama 3 days ago, when, again, no one was paying much attention, sign an extension of the warrantless wiretapping that is actually accelerated even under when Bush first put it in,
the FISA.
2008. Yes.
FISA.
So what we're going to see is, and then you also saw the release come out that hardly made the news, that Big Brother, FBI, was on the job with the Occupy movements. And you saw the way they beat down the Occupy people. So they're not going to tolerate it in this country. And I also believe, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is about, if you keep fighting in foreign nations, it's going to come home to roost. And I believe that they are putting these laws into place so that if there's civil unrest for whatever reason, maybe terrorism, financial disaster, they can put it down as quickly as possible. So to answer your question, I do not believe it's going to happen at the level that we're seeing it in other countries, because at the point now, you're in Pittsburgh. Do I have to tell you about that wonderful G20 meeting a few years ago, when they've effectively declared martial law in Pittsburgh?
They just recently settled lawsuits from that.
Yeah, so look what they did. I mean, look at those tough police, beating up co-eds with batons. So no, they're not going to tolerate it.
It's Essential Pittsburgh. We're speaking with Gerald Celente. He's the publisher of the TrendsJournal, about the trends he's forecasting for 2013. And yes, we are in Pittsburgh and here in Western Pennsylvania, fracking is a major issue. It has created jobs, but will it create the Frackenstein that opponents of fracking fear?
In this TrendsJournal that'll be coming out in probably about a week and a half, we have a nearly 10,000-word essay on it, white paper, the pros and the cons. And, one of the things in trend forecasting that I learned as a young man that was taught to me by my dear father, may his soul rest in peace, anytime I'd be talking about something and saying the party line, what everybody else was saying, he would say to me in Italian, "Papagallo, parrot, stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself." So what we've done with this piece, Paul, is we have enough information there for people to think for themselves. As I see it, and where I live in upstate New York, which is also fracking territory, I think there are more dangers than benefits. And that this is a brand new, really, experiment that has no really empirical data that could be supported to say that it's entirely safe. But as I look at it, and from the information that I know, and by the way, again, when people talk about a progressive liberal president, they should also know that President Obama has opened up over 700 million acres of public land to hydrofracking. And also that the deal is that they don't have to tell us what chemicals they're pumping into the water, into the earth to break up the shale until after the fracking process is over. So I personally believe that there are more dangers than benefits.
Okay, this is day 2 of 2013, and we've been hearing a lot of very downbeat trends and I don't want to say gloom and doom. I don't want to dive into that cliche, but certainly it doesn't sound from what you're saying as though the future looks very bright. So are there any positive trends that you can identify for us that we can look forward to in 2013?
Yes, and the biggest one is we're looking at is the Great Awakening. And something is happening that happened prior to the first revolution. People stopped looking up to nobility, and they realized that their salvation was in their own hands. And I believe that's what you're going to see more and more of. As we've seen, people are losing their respect for Washington, and we're going to start seeing people realizing that they create the future, and that when the consciousness changes, then everything changes. Each of us are born with unique gifts. Everybody has that secret weapon. And to me, it's bringing that unique gift to its highest level and working on it to keep making it better. When you do that and you find fulfillment and purpose and meaning in life, then you set the bar higher for everything, and then you demand better. And I think we're moving in that direction, particularly with the millennial generation. These are the people born between roughly 1980 and 2000. Many of them went to college. They have college degrees in worthlessness. They can't get a job. If they do have a job, it's paying, barely a living wage. But they're very conscious, and they realize that they have to create a better future. I believe we're on the cusp of a new American revolution, but one not of bullets and bombs or armies, but one of the mind and the spirit. And this is what set off the first American Revolution, and I firmly and truly believe with all my heart that we have a much greater future in front of us when you also consider other dismal times. Try this one on for size. How about the Black Plague that decimated, depending on whose numbers you look at, 60% of Europe? What followed it? A renaissance. So I believe we could have a renaissance and we don't have to go into ruin.
Gerald Celente is a prolific author and the publisher of the TrendsJournal. You can go to the website, TrendsJournal.com. Gerald Celente, thanks for joining us on Essential Pittsburgh, and again, Happy New Year to you.
Oh, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and everyone.